Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to session 2 of Human Resource Management course. I am Dr. Shikha Khera, your instructor from Delhi Technological University. Students, we have discussed the Introduction to Human Resource Management Part 1, wherein we discussed about the definition and various activities and roles to be carried out by HR professionals. And most importantly, we have also talked about the importance and benefit of human resource management. In today's session, that is the continued session of introduction, we shall be discussing about various activities of HR department, and along with that, we'll have some focus on evolution of personnel management to human resource management. Let's begin the session and try to understand the details of activities which are there in the HR department. We call them as functional areas within the HR. So within the HR, there are functional areas which include employee staffing, which has two subdivisions, that is recruitment and selection. So this employee staffing and recruitment and selection is the first and initial function which is done by the HR department. Moving further, training and development, which has the subparts as education and development and caters to the performance appraisal, or training becomes the basis for appraisal for the employees. Then the most important part, which is the remuneration of employees. This is covered by the compensation, which has subpoints as salaries, wages, incentives, etc. And then comes the interrelationship between the organizational members. So what are various relationships between employees? It can be between superior or supervisor and subordinate, or between two supervisors or between two subordinates. This relationship has to be sound and healthy, and it is resolved with the help of grievance resolution procedure in the organization and union relations. Then comes HR planning and research, which has parts like forecasting, job analysis, attitude service and validation. Actually, this is the first step of HR processes. So employee staffing is further divided into various areas like human resource planning, recruitment, selection, job analysis and staffing. We shall be discussing this as an independent session on it. Then training and development, which has career development, training, development, organizational development, performance appraisal and performance management. This also will be catered as a chapter. Compensation, which is divided into three categories: direct financial compensation, indirect financial compensation and non-financial compensation. This also will be dealt as an independent session. Then safety and health, we shall be discussing a session on safety and health, that is employee safety and health and welfare procedures. So this is how we project the HR activities, which have first connotation as procurement, then development, motivation and compensation, integration, maintenance and separation. Here we have components like job analysis, planning, recruitment, selection, placement, induction, orientation and internal mobility. These are all part of procuring the employees, that is taking the employees inside the organization. Then next is development. In the development, we are more focused upon developing the talent capabilities within the employees. We can give them executive development programs. We can send them to various technical conferences, to seminars. We can give them some hands-on training. We can give them some lecture method trainings or maybe some vestibule trainings. So the purpose here is to enhance their capabilities, which is most important. As we discussed in the previous session, Unless we focus on increasing the skill of the employee, we cannot achieve the competitive advantage. Competitive advantage comes from a term called core competence. And what is core competence? Core competence is the strength of the organization. And one of the biggest strengths, along with technology and other things, or the production facilities, etc., or the product itself may be unique, but the most important strength that organization carries is the human resources, and this strength needs to be strengthened further, and this is strengthened further by the training and development division by giving them right kind of training and developing the human resource. Then comes the next activity or functional area, that is motivation and compensation, which has subdivision as designing the job, work scheduling, motivating the employees by giving them rewards, evaluating the job itself, what are the characteristics of the job, what are the factors of job, what work is to be done, what task is to be done, how we can cluster the task, etc. Then comes performance appraisal. Performance appraisal helps know if we trained an employee and after training what kind of work he has done, and do we need to give him further some other training or the training was sufficient. Then compensation administration, incentives and benefits. This incentive and benefits directly affect the motivation and morale of the employee. Next is integration. So integration basically here is creating OCB. Now, what is OCB? OCB is organizational citizenship behavior of the employees. Now, you belong to a country, and if I say anything about your country, what comes to the mind? You feel that, oh no, you just cannot say anything about my country. I love my country, I belong to my country, and I am citizen of that country. And I am ready to do anything for my country. This is called as citizenship behavior. And when in the organization, employees are groomed in a manner that they should feel a sense of belongingness towards the organization, wherein they are ready to do and accept any challenge for organization. This is termed as organizational citizenship behavior. And we have to inculcate this OCB with the employees in order to have high commitment and integration of the employees towards the work which is assigned to them. So the subdivision or sub areas of integration include grievance redressal. So if they have any problem, any grievances that need to be addressed, disciplinary procedures, teamwork, collective bargaining, employee participation and empowerment, trade union and association and their work in collective bargaining and achieving discipline and teamwork, and maintaining cordial, harmonious industrial relationship. Until we have industrial harmony, all efforts of organizational heads or leaders will go futile, because if we do not have good team association and healthy atmosphere in organization, no amount of money can serve the purpose of success. Now that we have employees in the organization, we have to maintain them also. As any product or services, any gadget also needs a maintenance. Human resource is also a biological machinery which needs maintenance. So here, health and safety is the first aspect of maintenance. We have to give them healthy atmosphere. There should not be any occupational hazards where they are working. The working conditions should be safe. If they are working towards cotton openers, heavy machineries, revolving machineries or chemicals, they need to be properly given with safety equipments. What we call them as safety equipments, they are termed as PPEs. PPE is the personal protective equipment of the employees. Then comes employee welfare. We have to take care of their facilities like crèche facility, washing facility, sitting facility, and along with that, they should be given a cafeteria, restrooms, etc. So all welfare measures to be done for the employee. and social security measures, so that once they are not even part of, say, medical benefits, schooling for the children, housing facilities, and post-retirement benefits should be given to employees so that he feels connected with the organization. And thus, organization also builds its brand. And the last sub-part of various activities is separation. Under separation, this is the time when the employee gets separated from organization by various means. What are different means of separation? It can be retirement, which we call as superannuation. Superannuation is generally a time-bound thing which is automatically done once the person achieves that biological age of retirement. Layoff is something where organization can lay off because of any financial crunch. They do not have money to give to employees as salaries, or maybe they are closing down their units, so they are laying them off. But primarily due to financial crunch or non-requirement of the product, employees are laid off for some time and then they are called again when the work comes back to the organization. Outsourcing is we are taking employees outside the organization through various agencies or contractors, etc. They are basically the skilled or specialists in that particular area, and once their job is done, they may return back to their original organization or they may search for some other work. And lastly, the separation can be because of discharge from the duties. Discharge can be because of disciplinary procedures or can be non-disciplinary procedure. Now, depending on the nature, discharge is either called as a discharge from duties or it is dismissal. Dismissal is the worst form of separation for any employee. Now, after that, we have discussed about the activities to be carried out by the HR department. Let us now focus on what are the different challenges that HR people in organization face. That can include, as we discussed in the previous session also, globalization, technological innovations, workforce diversity, change in demographics of the workforce. As you see that there are a lot of certain organizations which have only aging population in them, so who are going to get retired in maybe next 5 to 7 years. So that means there is going to be a good talent shortage with such organizations. Only young people will be there, experienced people will be retired. So these are certain challenges, some challenges which HR people face, and let us see how to resolve these challenges. First, moving on to the challenges which are faced, workforce availability and quality concerns. So availability is what I just now talked about, that is the shortage part. There may not be good number of workforce available in a particular category, and the quality concern is about the skill part. Even if we have available workforce, they may not be properly skilled. So this challenge says inadequate supply of workers with needed skills for knowledge jobs is there. A statistic says 80% of manufacturing jobs report shortage of qualified workers. And education of workers in basic skill is also not sufficient, not enough, and technological skills are also missing. So this is the first challenge we should address to. Second is growth in contingent workforce. So here it represents 20% of the workforce, and it is basically the temporary worker, which is leased employee or part-time worker. Why this has enhanced? Because we needed flexibility in staffing levels. We may not need all the employees all the time. So thus contingent worker has increased difficulty in firing regular employees, which has also given birth to the increase in contingent workers, because it is easier to get separated from the contingent workers, and reduced legal liability from contractual employees as compared to the permanent employees. But in order to have these benefits, we have got some challenge, that is growth of contingent workers in the industry. Then workforce demographics and diversity is there, increasing racial and ethnic diversity, and also gender diversity from the melting pot to the salad bowl, more women in the workforce. Now, what is melting pot to the salad bowl? This salad bowl reflects nothing but the different diverse workforce from different background. And pot has been melted, that is everything has become one after the melting pot. So more women in the workforce, this is also a demographic change which is taking place, wherein gender differences, women is taking the major chunk of the workforce. Single parent household, so that makes them challenging for managing the work life, being the single parents. Even the dual career couples, they also have their own challenges. Hence, there is a good trouble in managing the household chores between the two. Then domestic partners, working mothers and family child care, significantly aging workforce and age discrimination. They are basically the sub-parts of workforce demographics and diversity that is posing challenge for the HR people now how to manage. Now how this can be a challenge for HR department in organization. If they have a dual career couple, they may have their own challenges, they may have differences in opinions, because of which they may be psychologically disturbed. As a result, keeping them retained and in right focus in organization will be difficult. Single parent again has their own challenges. Working women who are catering to the household, they have their own challenges. Making people work together who belong to different race, ethnicity and different background is a challenge. Then we have aging workforce, that becomes a challenge for HR department. Age discrimination is from an age of 25 years to an age of 55 years when people are working under the same umbrella. So their life priorities are different. Here I would like to highlight life priorities. Now, what are life priorities of any demographic population? The thought process of a 25-year-old is very much different than the thought process of 55 years old. The money connotation for 25-year-old is different than 55-year-old. One may be thinking of investing for future, the other may be thinking of investing for present. Now, how to merge between these two? How to have such HR policies and practices which cater to well-being and thought processes of both the population, both the age discriminations? It is a challenge. Say if you have to give holidays, work paid leave, if you have to give benefits with respect to their ESOP programs or investment opportunities or allowances. So maybe in today's scenario, the young person is not much bothered about having a family, rearing up a family. So he is not more concerned towards the children education allowance as the aging population may be concerned about, because they are from old school of thought. So as a result, there will be differences in terms of, or challenges in terms of planning for the policies which HR department has to cater. So HR policy and practices when it comes to managing the age discrimination is a big challenge because of differences in life priorities of people who are working in the organization. Also, few more challenges are like having mergers and acquisitions. Now, when we go for merger and acquisition in the organization, we have to go for a right sizing. Right sizing means we may eliminate layers of management. So if, for example, one organization had 7 layers. 7 layer here means the line function which I taught you in the previous session. Line function. So this is vice president, assistant vice president, manager, assistant manager, executive, supervisor, foreman, etc. So if they had 7 levels and when they get merged or they get acquired, they may have to reduce 1 or 2 levels. So that is right sizing based on the new structure of the organization. They may have to eliminate few layers. Now, what will happen when you eliminate few layers? That means you have to retrench few employees. Retrenching few employees means you have to tell them they are no more part of the organization, which is a challenge for the HR. How to retrench, whom to retrench, who is going to be more fruitful as an employee for the organization tomorrow, in future, etc. Those decisions are critical decisions and need to be taken care of. Then also having ethics and HR issues, firms with high ethical standards and global differences to be more concerned. So if the organizations are high in ethical standards, they are more likely to reach to the strategic goals and they are more positively taken care by the stakeholders and also better able to attract and retain the human resources. Along with this, if they have legal, political and cultural factors in different countries, these global differences along with ethics play a major role in differentiating the HR management of organizations across the globe. So HR role in organizational ethics is HR management plays a key role as the keeper and voice of organizational ethics. What is ethical behavior? What ought to be done? That is ethical behavior. What can be done, what may be done, what could be done, what you have done is not the question. Question is what ought to be done. What is right is ought to be done. And here HR plays a major role in maintaining the organizational ethics. Some examples of ethical misconduct in HR activities. Examples of employees, supervisors and managers' behavior with respect to certain activity. Here activities, compensation, employee relations, staffing and equal opportunity. And the misconduct that they have done is, for example, in compensation department, misrepresenting hours and time worked. By this, they can have higher amount of overtime. And this is a money-oriented unethical behavior. Falsifying expense reports. So they may come up with additional expenses which they have not incurred in terms of bills that they have produced. So they have falsified the expenses report. Personal bias in performance appraisal and pay increases. So if some superior projects a personal bias in performance appraisal, maybe he supports one employee and gives him hike, and he does not support the other employee because of personal enmity and reduces his pay. Thus, it is a misconduct. Inappropriate overtime classification. Under employee relations, employees lying to supervisors for the work done or work completed. Executives and managers providing false information to public customers and vendors. Personal gains and gift from the vendors by the employees in order to give them their contracts. Misusing, stealing organization assets and supplies, which is very common nowadays, where organizational members, they take the resources from the organization, maybe in terms of papers or other stationery items, or maybe bigger assets like printers, PCs, computers, etc. Intentionally violating safety and health regulations by the employees. Favoritism in hiring and promotion is also a misconduct. Sexual harassment, sex, race, age discrimination in hiring, discipline and termination. Someone favoring people from their own area, geographic area, their own state, their own country is also one of the examples of ethical misconduct by the people. So these are examples of misconduct in HR activities. They become a big challenge for people to work, and thus the HR has to see to it what is right, that has to be followed, and do not fall into the trap of such misconducts. Now, HR management as a career field. This is again a very crucial or critical topic for you as a prospective students, or prospective, I should rather say, the HR or managers in the organization. So it can be an HR generalist. Who is a generalist? Generalist is a person who can perform variety of activities. So if you are an HR generalist, you can perform a variety of HR activities. You can go for selection, training, recruitment, development, everything, but to a small extent, to a certain extent, because you're a generalist. If you become a specialist, in the case of specialist, you have an in-depth knowledge and expertise limited to the HR area. Now, what is the in-depth knowledge and expertise? So you can be HR specialist in recruitment, in selection, in training and development, in compensation management, etc. Here you are specializing in it, but you do not have much idea about the other fields. HR manager in general is the person who is a line manager of HR generalist and specialist. If you remember, I gave you this line and staff definition in the previous session. So HR manager stands here in the line function, while the specialist can be HR specialist in recruitment, HR specialist in selection, etc. So I hope you have understood what all careers you can think of. You can think of becoming a generalist, you can think of becoming a specialist, and tomorrow you can raise yourself up higher in the ladder as HR manager. So with the help of this pictorial depiction, I would like to give you the details on HR executives, generalist and specialist. So we have Vice President Human Resources and Vice President Industrial Relations. They are the line managers, while the specialists are, executive means the line managers, while the specialists are the ones who are specialists in specific area like compensation, training and development and staffing. So they are the specialists. And generalist is the one who's taking care of all functions. So Vice President Human Resources taking care of all sub-functions, while Vice President Industrial Relation is a specialist in the area of industrial relations. Similarly, traditional human resource functions in a large firm include President, CEO, or it can be Managing Director or COO, whatever is the nomenclature for the organization. They have a direct reporting from various functional specialists like Vice President Marketing, Operations, Finance and Human Resources. And further, if we go for the line function, here these are the line managers and these are the staff managers for HR function. One more example, wherein students, you can see that President is being reported by various Vice Presidents, and further it is divided into the specialist function. Now I would spend some time in explaining to you various human resource management models which have been given by the expert researchers and authors, and wherein they have tried, through their research, they have tried to highlight how the relationship between various sub-functions and the main function of the organization work. So the first model is by Fombram, Tichy and Devan model. This Fombram model was given in 1984 and it focused on outcome called as organizational effectiveness. As we know, effectiveness means achieving something which we have intended to achieve. So here the independent variable has been taken as the selection procedure. It has taken as the most critical part of HR functions because here we induct the new people, and if we induct right kind of people at this stage, probably whole process goes right. So after selection, development of that human resource or that employee is done. Along with that, appraisal is done, and after that rewards are decided. So development is, after development the person performs and performance is evaluated by appraisal. The appraisal gives the guidance to the manager how to or what kind of rewards to be given to people. If this all falls in place, then we achieve the organizational effectiveness. So the pretext or premise of this Fombram model is select right people, give them right development, correct development, have right kind of appraisal systems, accordingly reward the employees, you will get organizational effectiveness as the outcome. What does this model basically and other models cater to or try to give us insight into? The researchers have tried to find out these formulas, you can say, for industry. That in industry, if you follow this path, if you follow these critical high performance work systems, or you can say high performing practices of HR, it is going to give you the desired outcome. Let us see the other models also, what researchers. So, but before we move on to the other models, key features of this model is considered to be the first HRM model that was used to set stage for further developments of other models, and focuses on functions and interrelatedness of 4 functions which we have already discussed: selection, appraisal, development and rewards, and considered to be incomplete since it ignores environmental and contingency factors that impact the HRM function. So this is one of the limitation of the model that can be overcome in the future models. Then comes the Harvard model given again by Beer et al. In 1984. Here you can see various arrows are there which are making it in a circular motion. From here it is moving in a circular motion. So let us see what factors they have considered. In Beer et al. Model, they have considered 2 factors: stakeholders' interest and situational factors. Under stakeholder interest, stakeholder management, employee group, government and community unions, they are the parties to it. While in situational factors, workforce characteristics, business strategy and conditions, management philosophy, labor market and unions, task technology, laws and social values have been considered. So they are these sub-parts of the organization at apex level, and these are the sub-parts which are governed by the apex level. So it says that if these two factors are in alignment with the HR policy choices, what are the HR policies choices? Employee influence, human resource flow, reward system and work system. So if these four subpart of HR are catered, result is HR outcome, that is you have high commitment from the employees, higher competence from them, good congruence and great cost effectiveness. If we achieve this scenario as outcome, the result is in long-term consequences, individual well-being first, which will help retain if we have individual well-being. Organizational effectiveness, which was also there in the previous model as an outcome, and social well-being. Society at large is benefited. We have now see the arrows, which is most important. Once we have individual well-being, organizational effectiveness and social well-being, it gives back to the society in terms of in the organization. Again, we have positive workforce characteristics, effective strategy, good management philosophy, labor market relationship very nicely done, task technology very high and societal values very high. So this is how the vicious circle keeps on moving in the Harvard model. So key features we have already discussed various. So it is also important to note that Harvard model is premised on the belief that it is the organization's human resources that give competitive advantage through the treating them as assets, not as the cost. This is very important. You have treated them as asset, not cost, because of the treating them as stakeholders and giving them their dues. The next model is the guest model. Here, the guest model talks about outcomes in terms of financial outcomes like profits and return on investment. Now, with this model, the initial independent variable is HRM strategies. So, HRM strategies, which are independent variables, how the organization has drafted its strategies or HR strategic moves will eventually lead to the prospective financial outcomes. These HR strategies have you can say a dependent relationship with practices and outcomes. So HR strategies are then broken down into practices. Practices pertaining to hiring of people, training them, appraising them, compensation and relations. These practices give some outcome in terms of human commitment, quality and flexibility towards work. These outcomes in turn give some behavioral outcomes of individuals. And what are the behavioral outcomes? They are either highly motivated, they have high cooperation, they have high organizational citizenship behavior, which I explained to you. So with high motivation, high cooperation and high OCB, what is expected to achieve? The expected performance outcome is positive productivity, high innovation, good quality, lower negativity, lower productivity, lower absenteeism and lower turnover. When we have this ideal situation, this is an ideal situation for any organization. Every organization wants this, that we should have low absenteeism, low turnover, higher productivity and no negativity. High quality, high innovation and positive productivity. So when we have these, we have high profits and high return on investment. So Guest has suggested that how with the help of various HR practices, or what are the specific practices as per study of Guest, can enable the organization to reach to the final profit motive with which the organization has started. Here, students, what we can learn effectively is how one after the other, one becomes the independent variable and the other becomes the dependent variable. Like the HR strategies are independent variable and practices are dependent on the strategies. Then practices become independent variable and the HR outcomes become the dependent variable. Then HR outcomes become independent variable and behavioral outcome become the independent variable. and then behavioral outcome becomes independent variable, and the final financial outcomes become the dependent variable. So this is how Guest has tried to make all the variables interrelationship. So this we have already discussed. Next is the Warwick model. In the Warwick model, the focus is on some context, outer context and inner context. Outer context is the external business environment, and inner context is the internal business environment. Under outer context, we have socio-economic factors, technological factors, political, legal, and competitive factors, which are continuously influencing the organization. And because of this influence, the inner context like organization culture, organization structure, organization politics and leadership, task, technology, and business outputs in the organization become the internal factor. They in turn guide to the organization members which business strategy to formulate and what HRM practices to be or HRM context to be focused upon. First, what business strategy context to be focused upon? Objectives of business, product and the market, and strategy and tactics that the organization should follow. In HR context, what should be the role of human resources, the definition in organization, and organization of human resources and HR outputs that we expect from them. And then the HRM content is developed. This HRM content is HR flows, work systems, reward systems, and employee relations. Now let us flip this. Let us flip this and understand from this perspective. If the HRM content in organization is focused upon, HR flows are focused, work system is focused, reward system is focused, and employee relation are focused, they cater to HRM content. And this also caters directly to the internal environment, and together whole of these content and context, they respond to the external environment. So from an HR perspective, as an HR student, you have to focus on these parameters or practices so that you achieve the outer context. So we have actually understood the key features. So the model takes cognizance of business strategy and HR practices as the Guest model, the external and internal context, unlike the Guest model. So two things are there, business strategy and HR practices are similar to the Guest model, while external and internal context is a little different from the Guest model. It highlights the importance of environmental influence on HRM. Environmental influence here means internal environment and external environmental influence. Then comes the Ulrich model. Ulrich model is about you can say a window format. In this, we have two axes, and herein they are divided into 4 quadrants. And dimensions like processes, people, day-to-day activities and operations, and future strategic focus. So, for example, if the quadrant is future strategic focus and processes, we have to see processes from future perspective. Then the HR person has to behave as a strategic partner. If the future and strategic focus has to be taken care with respect to day-to-day operational activities, then HR person will behave as an administrative expert. In the scenario where future and strategic focus has to be in congruence with the people in the organization or their capabilities, they have to work as change agents. The HR people, they have to work as change agents. And while people from day-to-day activities, if they are taken care or they are focused upon, then they become employee champions, because they will be the ones who will take care of daily challenges which occur in organization. So key features of Dave Ulrich's model is, it identified 4 roles that HR professionals play. They become employee champions, they are administrative experts, they are change agents, and they are strategic partners. So this is the most important outcome of this model, that when you also serve the organization, you may have to serve as a change agent, as a strategic partner, as an administrative expert, or as an employee champion. Ulrich model elevates the role of HRM from mere transactional to that of transformational. So transactional role is only communicating or information exchange, while transformation role is filled with visionary approach and having a progressive, innovative outlook towards organizational growth. Further, it says that globalization has opened doors for new markets. We all agree to it. New mindsets, we all know that. New competencies also, because of new technology. Competencies also have to be inculcated, and new ways of thinking about business. So HR function needs to create new ways and means for attaining global agility, effectiveness, and competitiveness. So this is the takeaway from the Dave Ulrich's model. Okay, now as in the previous session also, I gave you one exercise to ponder upon, to think, and to find out if you can extract some information out of it. On the similar lines, there is a class exercise, though I understand that we cannot be in person present, but yes, at your own pace, in your own time, you can think of identifying this. So you have to identify unethical practices adopted in organizations with relevant solutions to the same. We have already discussed the unethical practices, especially with respect to HR domain. What is expected is that try to find out relevant solutions to the same and introspect with the help of some literature how you can eliminate such unethical practices from the organization. Now students, let us move on to another concept. So here I have discussed about the activities and various models. Evolution of personal management. As we have already discussed in this session also in the beginning and the previous session as well, that the personal term came from the army, from the defense services. So what happened that this term personal transformed into the term of human resource management, which eventually has transformed into the term of human capital management and human asset management also. So we will see a small journey of how these terms have evolved and what has catered to evolution of various functions also, differences in function of personal management and HR management. Though that has been discussed in previous session, let's have a look towards how the evolution took place. So from the definition, personal management refers to managing human resources in an organization to achieve both individual and organizational goals. And the field has evolved from basic welfare activities to strategic function. This we have already discussed in the particular triangle that we made, that from a smaller strategic function, we have reached to the broader strategic function, where less of administration as compared to when it was only focused on administration during personal management. So understanding this evolution helps us appreciate current HR practices and anticipate the future trends. Phase 1 of evolution starts from welfare and philanthropic phase, pre-industrial to early 1900s. Now here, the key features of this welfare and philanthropic phase, what we intend to say here, in the welfare phase, that means the requirements, basic requirements of employees was the focus. And philanthropic here means serving the society. So even workers were being served as within the philanthropic purview. So focus was workers' welfare, health and living conditions. Employers, they provided with them housing, food and basic education to the workers. There was no formal HR department during this era. Motivation of working was driven by religious values, social responsibility and from early reform movements. Example for this pre-industrial era is the Tata Group in India initiated housing, sanitation and education programs for workers in early 1900s. So students, as you can see here in the phase 1 of evolution of this administrative work for the workers, focus was primarily on their welfare of health, safety and other conditions, which gives them a environment where they can safely, peacefully work, along with some enhancement in their social status also by giving them facilities for education and housing, etc. From this philanthropic view, now let us see how this transformed into some stages. So the phase 2 of industrial revolution era was late 1800s and early 1900s. Here the labor discipline, productivity and control of labor was the focus area, and factory system replaced the cottage industries. As we know that the previous era was pre-industrial era, and during the phase 2 industrial revolution took place. And what happened during the industrial revolution? Mass production had begun. People now had shifted from handwork to the machine work. And in this mass production, this means what is starting to happen? Markets are developing. That is how mass production is being developed. Otherwise, why mass production is required? Because now new markets were emerging. People were ready to take the products and services from outside. Earlier, people used to prepare majority of things within the house, and or they were taking it in a barter system from their neighborhoods or neighborhood villages. But now the markets from across villages, districts, towns and states was developing, and people were acknowledging these products and services. Thus, what emerged? There emerged a new class. This new class is called as the labor class, which emerged in the factory system. So, unlike in pre-industrial era, in the phase 1, there were only handful of people in organizations which were to be catered. Now, what has happened? The number of workers have increased to a greater magnitude. So, their taking care, their requirements have increased also. So, thus we need a dedicated department to take care of this increased labor class in the organization due to the factory system that has evolved. So, along with this, the working conditions are not very amicable. They became very harsh, because which led to the workers' unrest. Why they became harsh? Because resources maybe were less and people were working. More people were working. Why more people were working? Because they were focusing on mass production. And this is the time when focus from employee welfare was shifted and harsh working conditions came up. And the personal management role was focused on handling disputes, maintaining attendance and enforcing the discipline. So you can see the negativity has now emerged during this time. And when we talk about disputes and unrest coming up, that means it is definitely affecting the productivity of the organization also. Hence, the realization of need for a structured labor management emerged during the phase 2, that is the industrial revolution era. In the phase 3, now because there was a structure needed for a one department in organization to cater to various employees, scientific management came into picture. And this is in 1900 to 1920s when thinkers emerged. Who were the thinkers at this time? Thinkers like F.W. Taylor, who is called as father of scientific management, and also Henry Fayol, who is called as father of management. They came up with their work, and these gave a pretext of scientific basis for doing work. Like they said, focus on task specialization, efficiency and performance. Task specialization means focus on division of labor. Do not give every work to everyone. Divide the work amongst them based on their skill and practices. Then key practices include job design, performance measurement, standard operating procedures. You know, these standard operating procedures, which are very prevalent in today's time, they are one of the major practices because of which any activity becomes successful, because we have an SOP for it and we follow that SOP. Hence, we are unlikely to do mistakes, and also we are very efficient. That is, we are able to do the time management properly. Personal managers handled hiring and ensured workers met output standards. So these were the scientific approaches. And the impact of these scientific approaches were, it introduced formal work study techniques and performance incentives so that unrest is reduced, so that those who are performing high, they get incentives, and those who are not performing well, they may be separated from the organization. Then comes phase 4 of evolution. This phase 4 includes human relation movement. It is from 1930s to 50s. In human relation movements, there were certain experiments which took place to find out what is the factor which affects the employee productivity, out of which one of the most important experiments is Hawthorne experiment by Elton Mayo. This was done in Chicago in Western Electric plant. Company was Western Electric, the country was US, and the place was Chicago. Elton Mayo was one of the most prominent behavioral scientists who performed Hawthorne experiment. Hawthorne is the name of the factory. Now, what happened in the Hawthorne experiment? The workers, it is called as, there were many experiments, I would say a relay of experiments took place, out of which one of the most prominent experiment was on elimination. Elimination is where the workers who were working, they were divided into two parts. One part was where the elimination remained constant, and the other part was where the elimination was either reduced or increased. So you can think of it, two teams of workers, one was controlled group. Under the control group, the lighting or the illumination remained the same. Under the experimental group, the illumination was either reduced or it was increased on a regular basis. What surprised the Elton Mayo and his team was that the productivity in the groups remained the same. So they were surprised that how come it is not much affected, even the light was dim. They asked the workers that what happened to you while the light was dim, how could you perform at that time? And they said that we are more focused towards that somebody is observing us, we are given attention, and this attention is more important than the light. So thus it was concluded that productivity is based on how employees' morale is about, how much are they happy, how much are they motivated. Productivity is definitely an outcome of that high morale, rather than the frills. Frills are important, benefits are important, environmental conditions are important, but amongst these, the most critical factor is the attention given to the employee, importance given to the employee, and thus that changes the attitude and morale of the employee. So with such experiments, the researchers during this era, they highlighted that the shift from the mechanical task orientation to human-centric management to be given. As this experiment focused and told that employee morale affects productivity, informal groups and recognition, it impacts the performance. We have to recognize the employee, we have to give them the attention, and personal function began addressing motivation, teamwork and leadership. So here came in phase 4, you can see the things started coming in. Phase 4, the focus area shifted now to motivating the employee, having the right kind of leadership and focusing on the teamwork. Phase 5 talks about the personal management era from 1950s to 1970s. Here the focus of this phase was formalization of personnel department. That is, a particular department was now established by the term personnel department. Functions expanded to recruitment, selection, record keeping, industrial relations and training development, unlike what was there in the initial phases of phase 1. If you remember, it was only taking care of welfare of the employees. Then role of personnel manager was now primarily administrative with limited strategic involvement. And now the challenge was still reactive, lacked integration in business goals. Phase 6 of human resource era, which is not very far from today's time, from 1980s to late 20th century, that is 2000, before the beginning, when the millennial approached and before the beginning of 21st century, the phase was about transforming from personnel management to human resource management. The personal term was now shifted to a resource. Focus was on strategic use of human resource to gain a competitive advantage. Functions now have evolved and now are termed as talent management, performance appraisal, organization development, HR planning, and making HR a business partner in the strategy, not just the administrative role. Phase 7, which is even in today's time more prevalent, so that is the strategic HRM and digital era. Here, focuses on alignment of HR strategies with business goals and digital integration and use of analytics and AI in various functions, prominently in recruitment. Emphasis on employee experience and well-being, as it was in the first phase also, in order to have good mental health, because that is also a challenge in today's time. Remote hybrid workforce, we all know that we have work from home facilities in today's time because of the technological advancements. So this hybrid workforce gives them a good work-life balance opportunities. Focus on employee diversity, equity and inclusion, and role of HR as strategic leader in innovation, culture and change management. So this is the description of personal functions we have already discussed. You can quickly have a glance on various focused personal functions. So what we can conclude out of the discussion today, that we need to have in today's time more of organizational resilience, unlike the previous phases of human resource management or personal management. Now, what is organizational resilience? What is resilience in general? Resilience is that we are able to overcome the scenario and situation in no time from whatever crisis we are into. Challenges is part of life. Same goes for the organizations also, and specifically for HR departments, since they are dealing with the most sensitive resource, that is human beings. So organizations need to be highly resilient. They need to have a strategic focus. They have to simultaneously take care of the mental health and well-being of the employees. And having said that, we should take care of the basic necessities and perform the basic functions of HR at the same time, which include compensation, training, development, and performance appraisal for overall growth of organization and individuals both, and society at large. The HR can cater to broader perspectives. So with this, I would like to conclude this session. I hope you all have understood the concept, various models that we discussed, models which enable us to find out relevant HR factors which can cater to different outcomes. Also, the activities and functions of HR department, the roles played by the HR managers, and the evolution of personal management, which is divided into 7 phases, to understand how the nuances of personal management evolved from personal management to today's current strategic human resource management. For this, I have referred to this bibliography. You all can refer to various texts and try to have more insight into the content. With this, I thank you all for listening to this session.
Hello and welcome to this piece of literary snippet. We usually know William Shakespeare as the most revered figure in the history of English literature. But we often tend to forget that he has also been one of the most hated figures in literature. And here I'm not talking only about those boys and girls who have to memorize long sections from Macbeth or King Lear or Julius Caesar before they can go and sit for their school or college exams. But I'm also talking about people who are themselves quite famous authors. Tolstoy, for instance, considered the writings of Shakespeare to be, and I quote, crude, immoral, vulgar, and senseless. George Bernard Shaw absolutely loathed Shakespeare, as he did Homer. But perhaps no other criticism about Shakespeare is more damaging than the one which says that Shakespeare is a marvelous storyteller, provided someone has told him the story earlier. Now, this piece of criticism is particularly damaging because it is true. None of Shakespeare's plays contain any original story whatsoever. They are all written using pre-existing materials, pre-existing stories. Now, does that diminish the stature of Shakespeare as a dramatist? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide. See you in the next episode of Literary Snippets.